today. Little announcement there about the recording. Yes, I'm delighted to be here with you today and appreciate the work that you are doing to uplift people in the world through your coaching work. And I'm hoping to uplift you and create a ripple effect where I can contribute to you and you can contribute to them. So I'm very happy to be here sharing with you about empathy and empowerment. I'd like to invite us to just take a couple of deep breaths and just, if you've been rushing around to get here, to let yourself land, to just take a couple of breaths and kind of settle into your body and just notice what it's like to be here for just a moment. Yeah, just landing, which is being here, this beautiful foundation of entering into interaction with anyone, whether that's empathy, coaching, honest expression, personal relationships. It's this really landing and being here fully present that is important. And I love this quote by Rachel Naomi Remen, where she says, when you listen generously to people, they can hear the truth in themselves, often for the first time. And I love this focus because the power of empathy and this opportunity to listen deeply and generously to people, I believe, is where a deep sense of empowerment can arise from. So today, we are going to explore empathy using the principles and concepts of nonviolent communication, the work of Marshall B. Rosenberg. And if you're interested in learning more about that whole body of work, he has a book called Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life. So I recommend that you pick that up. Today, we will focus on the awareness of some of the things that I would call empathy blockers, things that are obstacles to the deep level of connection that we would really like to have with our clients to empower them to understand themselves more deeply and move forward. So to really use empathy as a way of empowering clients. And that will be, we'll touch a little bit on these topics today. We are planning on a deeper and more expanded course through the coaching chapter in the future. So you can keep your eyes out for that. So the power of empathy in coaching. So I had years of work as a therapist and then shifted into this nonviolent communication and really using empathy as one of my key modalities to connect with people. And here are some of the things that I consider to be really powerful in using empathy in coaching. So first of all, it adds to the building of trust, building the rapport by really hearing a person and letting them know how we have heard them and offering that understanding. So creating a clear understanding between the two of us as we're working together, or 3 or 4 of us, depending on whether I'm doing a group coaching or couples or individual. So creating the clear understanding between us and then helping to deepen the client's self-understanding. So really, each time they are expressing and I'm offering an empathic reflection, they are checking in and saying, well, is that what I really meant? Is that what I said? Did she get me? And then they deepen. And if I did land it, I did nail it, they'll go, yes, and go deeper. So for me, it's been a beautiful unfolding kind of process when I offer this kind of empathy. It supports progress and movement forward. So I will talk more about that as we progress through our information today. It helps to decrease burnout. So offering anyone, whether it's a colleague, another coach, a colleague, or someone who's burned out, stressed, you're doing a coaching, some executive coaching or coaching someone who's in leadership or management, offering them a quality of empathy that perhaps they don't get in the workplace. because, who does the leader go to? Hopefully other leaders, who knows? Oftentimes the leaders have a sense of isolation. And so creating opportunities for them to express and vent and really be heard deeply is very, very helpful in decreasing the buildup of stress and eventually burnout. Healing is another aspect. And I'm guessing that as you're coaching with people, there is an element of healing that takes place, opening up to realizations, finding obstacles to progress and uncovering those and being able to actually find out, well, what are my barriers, and to heal some of that. And empathy plays a very powerful role in the healing as well, which allows people to free up their energy and the blocks to their thinking that keep them from moving forward. I just want to pause there and just check in. Does anyone have a comment or a question about what I've shared so far? Okay, and I am just getting a little bit of background noise, which I don't know, may affect the recording or not. Maybe make sure that everyone's muted unless you want to speak. And when you want to speak, just go ahead and unmute yourself and jump right in, please. Oops. There we go. So, as I promised, I want to talk a little bit about what some of the blocks or obstacles to empathy are, and a kind of attention on what empathy is not. So I would invite you to think of a time maybe when you wanted some empathy. You were sharing something important to you, and you received a response that may have stimulated some pain or some disappointment. And this might be an opportunity. You could just perhaps pop a little, word or two in the chat that shares, what did the person do? What was that response? What was the response that happened when you had that ouch? You wanted some empathy and you got something else completely. Yes, trying to solve the problem for me. Telling me their situation was worse. Oh my goodness, ouch, yes. Thank you for that. Yes. Anything else anyone wants to share about that? I do want to call to your attention that Hillary has placed in the chat the handouts for today, which you will be very supported by accessing as we go through our work today. So, all right. So the first obstacle to empathy is that giving advice, trying to solve a problem for me. And what I want to say about these obstacles is that these are habituated ways of responding. They're just widespread in our culture. I mean, you're probably going to find several of your favorites in here, or several of your least favorites, most painful kinds of responses. But these are, I would say, they're very often intended to be helpful. There's not a malintent here. People are intending to be helpful and supportive and to help decrease our pain, or maybe find some companionship or share that you're not alone. So they're well intended. However, they do tend to put a little block between the present moment and going deeper, and actually move a person away from what is present in them in the moment. So well-intended, habituated, let's be gentle with ourselves if we use these or have used these, and we're just going to wake up a little bit here. So explaining things, explaining it away, especially if someone is addressing you, well, when you did this, I got upset. And then we say, well, we get defensive and we start explaining, well, I would have called, but, I had 6 other things on my plate and I just couldn't do what I promised. And that is, it's a response, it's a clarification. However, it's not empathy. Correcting. Someone shares something and maybe they get a little detail that isn't what you experienced as the facts. And so you focus on the correction versus what it is that is really alive in the person in terms of how they're feeling and what matters to them. Consoling, they're there, don't worry, it'll be okay, we've all been through it, that kind of consoling, which, as we know, can feel comforting at times, and it is not necessarily the depth of empathy we could experience. Telling a story. Here we had Emily shared that one. They told me their situation was worse, and probably proceeded not only to say it was worse, but to go into all the story of it. So that reminds me of the time, and that just takes the spotlight and shifts it to the listener instead of the speaker who had something important to them that they really wanted to share and were making an implicit bid for empathy or request for empathy. Shutting down feelings. Cheer up, don't cry, be a big girl, big boys don't cry. Any of these kinds of, shut down the feelings. Well, you shouldn't feel that way because what's really going on over here is ... Excuse me. So sympathizing and commiserating. Oh, you poor thing. I know just how you feel. Or how could they do that to you? Oh man, I am so bummed that happened to you. Well, now who is it about? It's about me, the listener, instead of about you, the speaker. So we really are wanting to shift in another direction, which we're going to go into. So investigating and interrogating. This is where we start focusing on the who, what, when, where, how, why, and the details, which if you're an investigator, a policeman, a social worker, a lawyer, their, investigation and interrogation is definitely something that's useful and that you need to do. However, when it comes to empathy, these will shift the person away from what is really going on for them in the moment. So we consider this to be a blocker or an obstacle to the empathic experience. Evaluating and educating. Jumping in with, well, that's because, and then you proceed to explain the latest psychological theory about it. Or you start focusing on, well, what's the silver lining, or what is this teaching you? And once again, we're moving away from what's really, got the person going. And not that there is a place for that. Evaluation, education, giving resources, all those things, there is a place for that. However, for me, and in this model of nonviolent communication, compassionate communication, it comes later. Stories can come later, metaphors can come later, evaluation, education, explanations, ideas, strategies. Yes, those are all useful tools after the empathy. So they're different than empathy. I would not consider these things empathy. So I'll just pause there and see, how is this landing? Does anyone have a comment or a question about these? Okay. What I would love to do is just play with these for a few moments. And this does, it is helpful to have on hand your handouts. So on page 2 in your handouts, these obstacles to empathy are listed and little examples are given. And those are going to be helpful for this little exercise. And then, oh, sorry, I misspoke. On page 2 are the bids for empathy. I'm sorry. I was misreading. So page 2 are the bids for empathy. So these are things that someone might come to you and say, and there's an implicit request there for some empathic connection or understanding. So we will use these bids for empathy in a little bit of a contrast experience. On page 3 are the obstacles to empathy. So this is a participatory event here. I'm hoping you will jump in. I would love to have you turn your videos on, and we are going to create some breakout rooms and go into groups of 3 at least, and it might end up groups of 4, which would be fine as well. So the way this practice goes is for one person in the group to use the list of bids for empathy on page 2 and just say one of these comments to your group. So person would come in and say, hi, I'm Kathy. And I'd like to, just do the bid for empathy. I can't believe you didn't tell me about the meeting. I really wanted to be there. Now your listeners in your group are going to respond with the obstacles to empathy. So you can just offer a piece of advice. Well, what you should do is check your calendar every Monday morning and double check up the upcoming meetings. Or someone else might say, well, I meant to send you that email and I was updating my list and you must have gotten left out and oh man, I blew it. So you just throw out the obstacles to empathy. And what I'd like for you to do is to just simply notice how it feels to receive these responses and how it feels to give them. So you don't have to do a whole role play. You're just going to make the bid for empathy, receive a few responses, and notice how it feels. And then everybody take a breath. And then the next person will make a bid for empathy, and you'll throw out some different obstacles to empathy, and everyone notices how that feels. Any questions about the process we're doing? Clarity has been achieved? Okay, so Hillary, if you could.
And how much time would you like in the?
It's 12:20, 5 minutes. So okay. Keep it rolling. Let's say 6 minutes. So keep it moving. Hi, my name is, don't focus on chatting, just jump into the exercise and let's play a little bit and see how this feels.
Wonderful.
Good. And I don't know if you'd like to pause the recording just while we're chatting and waiting for 6 minutes. Hi. A couple more people coming back. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. Yes, I'd love to hear if you would be willing to just share, how was it to experience that exchange using some obstacles to empathy?
I think for our
uncomfortable.
Group, yeah, very uncomfortable. We discovered it's very deflating. Like you just don't feel like you went to a safe place to share.
Mm-hmm. You don't feel safe, you feel deflated. Yes, thank you. And I heard a couple comments about how it felt to actually give these responses as well. How was that?
For our group, that was hard too. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That felt like the hardest part to me.
Because?
Well, it was like consciously choosing to inflict pain in a sense.
Yeah.
Even in the small, curated experiment, it still felt a bit uncomfortable.
Yes. Thank you, Alex. Yes, Dina.
For us, it was just, I think we all were a little bit wanting to be empathetic and wanting to offer, that safe space, and just coming back with, oh, my life is so much worse than yours, just felt so dismissive. It was hard to play that role.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Amber, did you want to speak?
I just agree with what everybody's saying. And I think when we're in a place where we feel pretty calm and safe, we can be better more empathetic, right? And I'm just thinking in times when maybe as a parent, or if I'm feeling pressured or my nervous system is kind of, acting up, and how I might tend to be more responsive is more that problem solver or that jumping in, or, so maybe just being aware within ourselves, like which one of those we tend to go to without meaning to, and realizing that it doesn't feel good to the receiver, right? It's like, oh, thank you for that problem solving talent. I don't need that right now. Like my daughter, my 14-year-old, don't fix this for me or don't tell me what to do. I need to figure this out. But yeah, that I like to think that, oh, it's so natural for me to be present and just be validating. But I'm sure that when I'm full of angst or upset, I could tend to do one of these things, right?
Yes, we fall back into the old habits that, we've all been trained in a different way to move out of that. I'm imagining.
Yep.
A little assumption there, but there may also be some of these that maybe you weren't familiar with, or realizing, maybe I didn't realize the impact of doing this. Did anybody have that experience? Yeah, Pamela had that experience, like, oh, didn't know how that would feel until I received it. Thank you.
I
Yes.
would just add really quickly that there's also a lot of subtlety in this, because doing this training is helpful to see how you might slip out of empathy without even realizing it, and how training around this is important.
Yes, thank you, Hannah. I'm very much in agreement with that. A lot of subtleties to empathic connection. Are you still seeing my slides? Are you still seeing the PowerPoint? No. Okay, let me grab that again. I don't know what happened there. Oh, maybe when I went into the breakout rooms. Okay, so, and I realized I left one off and I didn't share the one-upping, which is another sort of form of storytelling. The mine is worse or mine is better kind of response. So also an empathy blocker. So what empathy is, we'll shift our focus a little bit now so that we say, okay, so what is it instead? So Marshall Rosenberg talks about it as the caring and respectful understanding of someone's experience. So that's very simple expression, does not include fixing or advising or changing someone or making sure that they get the wisdom that we have, that we want to make sure they get that realization because we're so wise and we want to give it to them. It's not that. Yes, as I said, there is a place for sharing wisdom and strategies and all that, but the empathy is just as simple. Could I understand your experience and honor it and hold a kind of warmth and care? I'm fully receiving what you're sharing with compassion, and then I'm letting you know what I'm understanding. So fully receiving, understanding, and sharing the understanding from a place of a deep, compassionate quality of presence. So bringing our open hearts, bringing our whole being to the listening, bringing our whole mind. We've let go of everything else in the world. It's totally focused on whoever is sharing with us in this moment. So this is how I'm holding empathy in the NDC-based consciousness or frame of mind. So I want to share with you some of the key components of empathy in this model. First of all, being this compassionate presence, which I just mentioned. And then a quality of curiosity, which is not focused on the who, what, when, where, how, why stuff, the interrogation. But this curiosity is focused in an open-hearted, curious way about what is alive in you right now. What matters to you? How are you feeling? What are you valuing? What really has you going here? What's bringing up all this emotion? So this very open-minded, open-hearted curiosity about feelings. So this is one of the key components that I'm very much going to put my attention on. What are you feeling? What are the emotions that are present? What are the needs and values? Which I'll say a little bit more about all of these elements in a few moments, but these are some of the key pieces. And then this resonant language that helps us to connect and giving responses that carry forth the warm quality of compassion, along with the curiosity and the inclusion of feelings and needs and values. And then, of course, we're going to include a kind of body language that brings us into a sense of relaxation, rapport, comfort with that person. So we're doing a little mirroring. We're using a kind of tone that is reflective of their energy and joining their energy, matching intensity, that kind of being with a person where they feel like we are really there. So if I'm, sitting back relaxed on my, coaching couch, and I'm like this, and the person is on the edge of their chair, with their arms crossed, and I'm saying, oh, so is it that you're really stressed out right now? They're gonna be like, person, are you a person? Is anybody there? Are you with me? So just some of these elements that, we get nuancing around. Any comments about these things that I'm sharing right here about what empathy is and the key elements? Probably very familiar, I'm guessing. So I want to bring up the two. There are in nonviolent communication, there are 4 key components that we use. There are observations, feelings, needs, and requests. So today, for the purposes of really focusing in on empathy, I'm really just highlighting the 2 pieces that come out the most in the empathic exchange. And the first one is the feelings. And this is where we connect with the emotions and the sensations. So the energy that is in motion, I consider feelings or emotions to be the energy that is in motion inside a person. No one could deny it. No one could say, no, you don't feel that way. So it's important to really name what that energy is that is owned within the person. Now, one of the key assumptions in this model is that feelings arise from needs being met or not met. Needs that are met or not met. Of course, there's thinking involved because we're interpreting whether needs are met or not. So there is thinking involved there. However, the relationship between emotions and needs is a causal one, this is where self-responsibility lives. When a person can recognize that an emotion is related to something that they value and hold very precious and are passionate about at the level of a need, which I'll say more about as well. So feelings, it can also include sensations in the body, of course, that's somatic relationships. So emotions and sensations. The distinction I want to make very clear here is the distinction between feelings and thoughts. That very often in our languaging and in our kind of habituated language in our culture, people say the word feel and what they name is a thought. I feel betrayed. I feel like a failure. I feel like you don't love me. I feel abandoned. They're actually thoughts that are kind of imbued with emotion, but they're really basically an interpretation of a behavior. So these are things we'll go into much more depth in the longer course, but I really want to name this because so often this language can trip people up. And when clients are trying to talk about their emotions and they're actually naming thoughts, we can help them by translating them into actual emotions and helping them shift into that awareness of what's alive and moving in them energetically, different from a thought. So if I say, I'm feeling betrayed, or my client says, I'm feeling betrayed, and I can say, oh, is it that you're feeling a lot of pain right now as you're thinking that your partner betrayed you when they shared that information with someone else? So I'm naming an action and a behavior and a thought, and I'm also naming the feeling. Were you feeling hurt? Are you feeling pain? Are you feeling hugely disappointed? Might be another emotion. So getting that clarity between emotions and thoughts is very helpful to clean up this muddle that gets happening in our brains. We use emotions, we can use emotions as indicators that something really matters to us. So when someone comes in with a lot of intensity and emotion, of course, we are like curious, well, what is it that you value? What is it that matters to you? What is that beautiful kind of core value or universal need that is activated right now that's leading you to have this level of emotion. Excuse me. So this is a key component in being able to reflect for someone what's going on for them, is to be able to name emotions using emotion language versus thought language, and to really connect to what is present in the person. What is really present, what's moving, what's alive. So feelings are kind of like the red light on the dashboard in the car. You know, that red light goes on and you get curious. Oh, there must be something in the engine. I'm going to lift the hood and look underneath and get curious, like what's causing this? So feelings actually are wonderful pointers to get us to the point of the deeper issue, the needs, the qualities of life that someone truly values. So these two things tie right in together as we're approaching empathic understanding. When a feeling arises, I want to see if I can hear, understand, and reflect the needs, which I would call qualities of life that nourish and satisfy us as human beings. And, you know, we have Maslow's hierarchy. You have, you know, everything from survival needs to deep meaning and awakening and all of that. And that's all included in this. These qualities of life that nourish and satisfy us as human beings, everything from food and sleep to the deepest meaning, contribution, you know, and everything in between, from efficiency and dependability to creativity and love and care. So come here, cursor. Here we go. The underlying assumption in the model around needs is that they are universal and ongoing, meaning that most human beings would recognize these qualities of life as things that are valuable and important. So this is the level at which we can connect, find a shared humanity, find the deepest sense of what matters. And knowing that these are universal, this is a level at which we can find that common ground, especially if you're coaching people who are in conflict or doing any mediation work. This is extremely helpful. I just had a civil rights lawyer talking about how he employed this concept of reflecting feelings and then really getting to the needs, and how it just changed the whole dynamic. And the two people went out and worked together on their solution instead of having to go and go to court. So they're universal and ongoing. We can find the common ground. We can find out what really matters to the person. And they are at the root of feelings, which I've described already, independent of persons and actions and distinct from strategies. So needs, these are the qualities of life that motivate us. They actually motivate us to do what we do. So love, autonomy, efficiency, any of these qualities of life are going to be what motivate people. A person wants belonging. So, you know, they go and do their best to fit in. You know, they want to fit in. And so they change their clothes and their hair and how they talk. And, you know, all of that is motivated by this beautiful need for belonging. So when we're working with clients in coaching and giving empathy, the idea is to stay in the empathy long enough to really uncover and let them realize what the true needs are, what is really motivating them, what is it that they're longing for at the deepest level. If we stay with empathy only briefly, and we think, you know, we uncover one or two needs, so often we start strategizing before the depth of what's really going on has shown itself. So staying in empathy in the coaching, in the coaching setting is very powerful for them to unfold. Just give me one moment here. I don't know what's going on with the So the level of sharing about and understanding needs is where we find that deepest quality of authentic connection. So I do want to pause here and just check in and see, does anyone have a comment or question about what I've been sharing, the key components and feelings and needs in particular from this perspective?
I have I guess a request. I just kind of like to hear more about when you're working with clients, how do you help them distinguish like that we're not talking about people and we're not talking about like actions that you need, right? But that these are intrinsic motivations, they're universal qualities. I don't know. Can you just say more about how you kind of put those things into the session or bring them up authentically with your clients?
Yeah. So I do it in a very sort of natural way in terms of offering the empathic reflections, where I will actually include, when I hear them sharing and naming a feeling, I'll actually include the feeling and then connect it to a need. So let's say, let's say a client is expressing, gosh, I'm having such a challenge with this other lawyer when I'm trying to take a deposition, and this other lawyer is like interrupting and interrupting and interrupting, and I can't like just get the information I need. So my reflection, instead of me saying, well, what are your needs? I would say, oh, so is it that you're extremely frustrated with that because you're wanting some efficiency, you're wanting to have the connection with the client that's so important to you? And is it that you're wanting respect for the work that you're doing and really wanting to bring that to completion efficiently? So see how I'm weaving in the needs along with the feelings in the reflection. Does that help, Emily?
It does. Thank you so much. I just know, sometimes people can get stuck at the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really easy, but it's easy to think, it's just this person in my way. It's that they're not giving me this thing. If I could just have the chance, I know what's next, and it's like there is something deeper and there is a lot of patience required. So I just was curious if you could dive in, and I thank you for your time.
Yes, and another thing that I use, a question that I might use when they say that, well, if this person would just do such and such, I might say, and what would that give you? What really matters to you about having that? And then that'll take them a little bit deeper. And I'll also do things very explicit, like I talk about feelings and needs, and I'll give them a list, and say, here, let's explore. And I can just do that very explicitly as well. Thank you for your question, Emily.
So can I continue with that? Just one thing in the coaching session. So
Mhm.
often we're coaching someone to an actionable item. So when we brought them through that empathic reflection and we've named the feeling and then talked about what they're going to do to get that need met, do you go there next?
I want to make sure I've really fully explored everything first. And maybe you're holding that in mind. And it can be tricky because sometimes we think we're there because we've named a need or two. So I really want to keep reflecting and making sure. And I might even say, is there anything else about this that you want to express or explore? And really make sure we've done a thorough job on the empathic exploration and reflection. And the reason for this being, because I want to make sure I've identified the deepest, most important needs to them in that moment. Because if I move into strategies and I haven't done that, I'm going to find things happen like lack of follow through or lots of resistance, so I really want to have them aware of and have them. I'm not only reflecting when I'm offering empathy, I'm not only just reflecting these things and naming them and then saying, okay, got it, in a mental way. I actually, when those things land, I want to give space for the feelings to be there, for the whatever emotion arises to, and then to bring compassion to that and bring that gentleness to that so the person can unwind whatever the tension or distress or pain is there. So we slow things down enough that all of that can happen. Because if we don't, we only do the intellectual and boom, 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 we got it. And then we say, okay, go do this. And they're still tripped up on the pain. They're not going to follow through. They'll get halfway there and then they'll get stalled. They may think they want to, and they'll say, yes, yes, go, let's go. And then you come back and you go, oh, so what happened? It didn't quite go. And so it seems to take a little more time at the beginning, to process and stay in the empathy a little longer. But in the long run, it saves time. Does that help, Hillary?
Very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I do want to offer you some, and like I said, this is a taste today. We're just touching on some of these principles and aspects and practices. So I do want to give you the opportunity to try the other side of the coin and apply empathy. And I know you've been doing empathy in different ways for a long time, probably many of you. However, I want to invite you to just try this out and use this phrasing and insert the feeling and needs words. So we'll go back into our breakouts, and you can use those bids for empathy once again on page 2, and you can make those comments to your group, and then the individuals in the group can respond with one of these empathic types of responses. Now, there are some key things about this that notice that every one of these is a question. So I'm not telling the person how they feel or what they need or value. I'm checking. So the whole purpose of this, these are what I call them reflective responses, reflective questions. So that I'm capturing the contents of what they've said, I'm reflecting it back and couching it in terms of feelings and needs, which they're going to give me lots of hints about. People will actually say feeling words, or you'll get it from their tone or their facial expression or whatever. And they'll be talking about something that will indicate a need. So this is a basic list on your first page of your handouts. You have a list of some basic needs or values, and then underneath it, feelings and emotion words that you could use. So I want to encourage you to use those lists, because sometimes we fall into sharing or naming a feeling, but it's actually a thought, or naming a need, and it's actually a strategy. So these lists are helpful for just making sure we're accurate on that front. So there are different ways of phrasing the question. Are you feeling, insert emotion, because you value, and then insert need. And then there are ways of doing it without necessarily using the word feeling or need, but these are just different ways of phrasing it. And you have this in your handouts too. And I do want to encourage you to use the templates to try this out. So are you upset because honesty matters to you? Is it that you're so frustrated because you just long for some understanding? Do you feel excited because creativity is so important to you? Are you annoyed because you thrive on efficiency? So just see how I'm just in a very simple way, connecting the feeling and the need. And of course, that will be based on the content that's presented to me by the person sharing. Comments or questions about the practice we're going to try out here? Yeah, so let's see how this feels. Again, a similar structure to the practice. One group member makes a bid for empathy, other group members, several people offer some empathic responses. Just notice how it feels, say thank you, move on. Just get a feel for as many as you can in the next, let me see, we're a little behind where I thought we'd be, 45. Let's take 12 minutes. And give you a healthy practice. Well, okay, let's make it 10. I'm going to go for 10. All right, let's try this out for 10 minutes. Please bring the group back into breakouts, Hillary. That's okay, great. So it'll take them a minute probably to get back here now.
Some good work in the rooms.
I think so. Welcome back. We have a moment or two if you would like to share comments about how did that feel to receive those responses? And was that different from the empathy blockers? How was it? Or any other experiences or questions? Ahas, insights.
For me, I ran through like a real life scenario that I was dealing with. It's a little bit like peeling back the layers to get back to what is the true thing that's happening here. Because you may start with, we started with frustrated and ended with worried.
Yeah.
And so it changes, like it's a deeper emotion. And if you start on that first emotion, you miss out on what the real issue and problem is that's underlying that.
I love that you had that experience. Thank you, Dina.
Yeah.
Yes, other insight or experiences you'd like to share with the group to benefit everyone?
Wouldn't that be more of a the emotion that the frustration versus worried, rather than like whatever the need is? That's what we're trying to get to. Is that what we're trying to discover?
Yes, and feelings can deepen as well. And as we notice the need, so let's say I start out frustrated because I want cooperation. And what I start to realize is that I'm really worried because I care about, how this person is feeling in the project. And so there's a deepening of feelings and needs.
Mm.
And when we land on the true needs, then like a whole different layer of emotion comes up. And I find that particularly true with anger. If I start off with some level of anger, I often find that there's something underneath there when I start realizing, oh, what I'm really concerned about here is safety. And then I'm terrified. So, anger was my protective structure, and the fear was actually the deeper emotion that's related to wanting safety. So yes, and there's tons of different layers to all of that. And yes, thank you. Anything else before we shift?
Kathy, it makes me think the author Jill Bolte Taylor, who has written a couple books, neuroanatomy. She's a neuroanatomist who suffered a stroke. Anyway, she talks about how we are feeling people first, right? And it's all guided by our seeking safety and understanding and the needs, right? Sort of constantly surveying for that. So feeling first, then thinking. And a lot of times people lead with the thinking, as a defense or whatnot, but okay, and that might take like some time, which is true. And so if you only have like 3 sessions with someone, that could be a little bit like, shoot, I have to get through this so quickly. But I guess having some faith in that, helping them through that process and seeing them is even more beneficial, right?
Yes, yes. I mean, my experience and my belief, and of course I'm living and teaching this work, so I find it to be highly effective. The empathy is so powerful, and people will open up, they will deepen. And even if I miss a reflection and I don't quite get the thing that they meant, they'll say, well, no, it's more like this. And because I phrased it as a question, they feel totally comfortable doing that. So yes, thank you for that contribution, Amber. I want to just sort of tip on a couple of the pitfalls and just touch on them a little bit. So the pitfalls that when we use those empathy blockers is that we move away from what is present. We don't have that opportunity to deepen. We shift into strategizing maybe too early, or not deepening into the needs. Another pitfall we have is telling versus checking with a reflective question. So when I say, oh, so you are, instead of are you, the person can be sitting there, and if I'm not naming it accurately for them, they can start to put up a little barrier or feel a little defensive at being told. So I like to really keep it a reflective question that is really trying to capture as closely as possible the feelings and needs that they have expressed. I want to phrase this as a question, and I want to go toward the longing. So phrasing it as a lack is a pitfall. Like, oh, because your need for competence is not being met, it's like, oh, we could go together down this negative spiral of how awful it is that your needs are not met. Or I could say, oh, because you so value competence, and that's something that really nourishes you. Now we're going in a positive direction towards something they value and long for and love. Getting ahead of a client's content, which came up in one of the groups, we were talking a little bit about leading. That's a pitfall too. So naming, like thinking, oh, well, they must be feeling this, or they must be needing that, and they haven't talked about it yet. And you get ahead of them, you'll have a mismatch. They won't experience the resonance that they need in order to unfold, relax, and go deeper. So that can be a pitfall. Moving to strategies too soon. We've touched on that a little bit. We don't fully explore and get to the real core needs. We design strategies based on needs that aren't maybe quite it yet. And then we have, again, that lack of follow through or engagement. So empowerment. I experienced through empathy by giving this full connection to the feelings and needs. And that means I'm understanding their feelings and needs. And more importantly, the client is understanding their feelings and needs. And I have been the companion holding their hand along the way to discover and deepen and unfold and uncover what those feelings and needs are. So by taking our time with this process as well, as I mentioned, when we do land one of those reflective questions and they say yes, I'm not in a hurry to go, okay, so tell me more, or what else, or, I'm just going to say, I'm just going to be there. They'll say yes, and then I'm going to let them feel it, let them notice how it lands in their body. I might even say, how is it to notice that? Very simple, and give space so that they can then deepen, and then let them make the next foray into what's important to them next. Yeah, now that I really notice that, what I also want is, and then they'll start telling you more because I've given this space and I haven't rushed them back into a thinking process. Cursor. So this requires on our part as the practitioner and the coach to trust the client's inner wisdom, and that we again are holding their hand and companioning them as we facilitate this unfolding by reflecting and being compassionate and giving space. So we're trusting that somewhere in there is an inner wisdom, and they will come to a knowing. And I notice oftentimes, and not all the time, oftentimes when people do this uncovering and experiencing through empathy, there is a natural resourcefulness that arises because they relax, they get in, now they are in a more peaceful space, and their full brain activity comes back online, and they are resourceful, and they start going, what I think I want to do about this is, and it might be the very thing you were thinking about way back at the beginning of the session, but if you had told them that, there would be resistance, right? They need to come to it. And this is part of the pathway, a beautiful pathway that we can take them along that allows them to come to that resourcefulness and allow their wisdom to spring forth in terms of what they want to do next. So we can trust this process, and we can trust the client's inner wisdom. And then we can move to a collaborative strategizing, because sometimes even after doing all that, they're still at a loss of what to do. And then we could say, oh, I'd like to share a story, or I have a couple of ideas. Are you open to hearing them? Or would you like to brainstorm together? And now you're in a collaborative process that is empowering them and will engage them in really saying, yes, I'm all in and I'm going to go do this. So empathy is also an opportunity. Then if you don't have follow through, then maybe something was missed, or they weren't ready to deepen or uncover the needs that were most important to them. And so we can then use empathy to process, what they come back with. and do another exploration. So to process that lack of follow through without judgment, with compassion, with, companionship, and we could uncover more needs and facilitate their self-compassion. There's no making wrong. There's this, okay, just so where are you? And to encourage them to give this self-compassion, because when they start whipping themselves, then becomes a new barrier to trying again. They start to feel hopeless, like, oh, I never followed through, blah, blah, blah. So empathy, very powerful in all these ways. So I do, before I go to the kind of summary and takeaways, I just want to check in and see if anyone has a comment or a question about the things I've expressed about the empowerment. We can go back to that slide if you want. Comments or questions, or maybe you are starting to make some connections about how this might contribute to your work. So let me proceed a little bit here toward just capturing our takeaways from today. We put some attention on what is the power of empathy in the coaching setting, and what are some of the obstacles that can keep us from creating that resonance and deep empathic connection and deepening understanding. And you had a little experience of that, and you noticed the pain of it. And then we talked about bringing the curiosity, the warmth, and the compassion, and by reflecting with questions about, am I understanding your feelings and needs? And we practiced that and felt the contrast experience and actually did some empathic responding. And then we talked a little bit about pitfalls and highlighted how empathy can empower clients. So again, I'll just check in and see, would anyone like to share something, an insight, a question, a comment, or something you are taking away specifically that you imagine will contribute to your work as a coach?
I'd like to share because I just really appreciate, Kathy, when you were speaking, I took the note you said when clients experience resonance, they unfold, relax, and go deeper. And I think that's just like such a succinct and beautiful way to take a lot of the lessons of today. And I just really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Emily.
I'll just share that this has been really helpful to just hone my attention. So bringing it to the forefront of my mind, and definitely will be paying attention to empathy when I coach and all of these skills that you taught us. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Anyone else wanting to share? Yes, Amber.
I just think it's so great too. Thank you. It really fits in with so many of the things that I think about and work on a lot, but also that, it helps I keep coming back to my purpose, is to provide opportunities for clients, right? Like I can't know all of those things, right? And this is how to create that space and how to stay grounded in our work that we do too. So thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Appreciate it. Pamela.
Yes, I was thinking that I thought that I was very empathetic in the past, but I think I can be even more so. And I think that I jump too quickly to the solutions or the fixing or the advice piece of it, because I'm thinking that's what they need. That's what they're paying me for. But maybe I need to spend more time on the feelings and their true needs to make sure that they're getting the right thing.
Yes, thank you so much, Pamela. I'm appreciating your self-insight. Anyone else wanting to speak before I share a few more things?
I just want to say that I can see how this can totally deepen the learning. The questions are provocative. Thank you for that.
Yes, so glad you were here. Okay. So I do want to offer you opportunities to learn more. I have just recently created and posted a self-paced course on empathy, which goes into all the details and nuances. And this is online, an evergreen course, and you can, I believe this is linked. You could actually link right on, click on that and you'll capture the link for it. And or you can copy and paste the link that I have posted there. And just this going into more depth into empathy, and that's a course you can take at your own pace. The ICF High Country chapter is we have been talking about and are planning to offer a more in-depth course on this particular topic, where we can go ahead and go into depth on each of these things that I've brought to you today, and more practice and coaching as you're working through all of these aspects that I brought you and more. So keep your eyes open for that. And then here's my website, which is also on the handouts, I believe, but anything that's underlined here, you can click and it is linked. So nvctrainingsource.com, you can find more information about me, my work. Go to the calendar. I have upcoming training, the foundations of compassionate communication, where you can learn all about the whole model of nonviolent communication. I just scheduled a weekend in-person training. If I get enough people willing to come in person, I'll go ahead with that. I have an online course right now happening. That's only one session in. You could join that. I do a 9-month program. If you really want to go deep and immerse and become a facilitator, I offer a 9-month program that starts every fall. So those are all, learning opportunities. This is my full-time work. I love sharing it. I love bringing it to coaches who I believe can make such a beautiful impact on people's lives in our work. And so I'd love to have you integrating NVC as much as you would like. And so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me, you can call me. My information is on the handouts as well, and my website. And I just would so love to work with you further. I want to thank you for being here today and for your participation, for really jumping in and playing and trying things out and having experiences and supporting each other and sharing this today. And I hope it does contribute to your work. And I do hope to see you again. And I'd like to close with this quote from Stephen Covey. When you show deep empathy toward others, their defensive energy goes down and positive energy replaces it. That's when you can get more creative in solving problems. So that for me is an affirmation of empathy first. Such a delight to be with you today, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank all of the participants. I think that you would agree with me that, what Kathy said, that she loves what she does as a parent. This was incredible, Kathy. Thank you so very much.
My pleasure. I hope you have fun with the rest of your week.
What a way to kick off coaching week. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hey, if anybody has questions, I'm free to stay on for a few minutes if you like. Sorry, I didn't say that sooner. But...
Kathy, thank you very much. I'm president of ICF High Country chapter, and just want to thank you on behalf of the chapter for joining us today, being a part of Coaching Week.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Amber. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. It was very useful.